Welcome to Making Sense of the Madness. We got a great show lined up for you today. January 6th, still an issue, and we've got a ways until this next president is inaugurated. Will he be able to make good on all the promises, especially in regards to that day? To discuss that and much more, we have Tim Hale and Ed Martin. You're not going to want to miss it. Buckle up and get ready to make sense of the madness. And we are back. We are joined by Tim Hale, one of the January 6th defendants that has been quite outspoken and should be for many reasons. Look, you're lucky in a lot of ways to be out right now as compared to some of the others. Not so lucky, obviously, in what had happened to you and the system of injustice that took place post January 6th. We've gotten, some rhetoric from Trump, some assurances, but now he has to make good on that rhetoric. So what do you think the overall playing field is for the January 6th defendants that are still in court? I believe somebody was just charged, an ex-football player was charged a week and a half ago. So they're continuing to arrest people. And those behind bars for literal decades, like Tario and Biggs.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of work to do. So to be frank, people are focused pretty heavily on the pardons, but like you just mentioned, there's a lot of stuff that's actually going on right now. So I think the first priority is going to be taking care of those who are still behind bars, commuting their sentences and releasing them. I think also, of course, stopping the prosecutions so that we're not kicking in the doors of old ladies. I think that that's going to be the main priority. And then I think that's going to lead into the pardon process. Yeah, there's a lot of work to be done. You mentioned some of the Proud Boy leaders. I was friends with the Oath Keepers in jail, and some of them have egregious sentences as well. Some of the leadership there got upwards of 20 years as well. But even some of the lower level Oath Keepers, they still got 12 years and stuff like that. So yeah, a lot of these high profile cases that were just, put out there for a narrative, those really need to be looked at. You also have other defendants like Julian Cater. He was framed as the murderer of Officer Brian Sicknick, which never happened. So he got utterly smeared, and he got over a 7-year sentence. So he's still rotting in prison. So I think restitution is also going to be something they look at, because you can't get all this time back. I can't get the last 3 years of my life back, but I do think that there are going to be ways that the new administration tries to make us whole. And I think that's going to start on day one.
I certainly hope that it starts on day one. Trump just rolled through MSG with his entourage that included Speaker Johnson. I think Speaker Johnson is a mixed bag. This is somebody that right when he got in, after, we had some political theater basically going on when it came to the Speaker of the House. He said we were going to get all this video. We're going to get every single little bit of it. Newsflash, folks. We've had an election. We're past that. We still haven't gotten all the video evidence. In fact, I would assume at this point, a lot of that video evidence is obviously being shielded because it is so egregious and it tells a very different story. Now, on top of that fact, you obviously had these show trials, and I don't know what else to tell anybody when they bring in a Hollywood producer, put it on television, and run a bunch of YouTube clips as a trial. I mean, it's every definition of a show trial, open-ended, by the way. Just like, hey, we'll keep running if we want. They've destroyed evidence after the fact, mainly eyewitness testimony in which they recorded these people probably telling a very different story, Tim. So I think that's a hurdle to get over on day one. Do you think that Johnson is going to do an about face and fast track this stuff? Because I obviously believe if we want to keep true to our word, he kind of has to, right?
That would be a best case scenario. Yeah, I'm not confident. I had a lot of hope in Johnson at the beginning. Maybe he'll pull a rabbit out of the hat later on with the new administration. Because there's now there's a mandate, so suddenly he'll look. Here's the deal, man. Like, you're right. There were thousands and thousands of hours of video that haven't been released. There are cameras that they still don't acknowledge exist, but that we know exist. Defendants have had their discovery withheld. They don't want the public to see the video. I mean, in terms of like what they don't want the public to see, there's the one aspect of people not doing anything bad at all, and they don't want that narrative to come crashing down. There's the aspect of, well, look, I mean, I think that they are protecting feds. So I don't know if you remember this, but a couple months ago, they started releasing some video and they were actually going out of their way to blur people's faces. And it's like, well, that's interesting because all this time, the FBI has already had this video. So who are they really protecting? And the sedition hunters were finding people with pictures of their ears and stuff like that. So I think that they were protecting assets in the crowd. It was very strange. And then they just stopped doing it and they stopped releasing anything. And yeah, regarding to the show trials, yeah, I mean, the whole thing's been a giant facade. I mean, I can tell you, released some of my transcripts from my voir dire hearings. They choose people from Washington, D.C., which is obviously very biased, but all the people that are on our juries are DOD employees, DOJ employees. They work for the government. I had people they were trying to put on my jury who worked for Chuck Schumer. So yeah, it's all a giant facade, and I think they're withholding a lot of the video because I think that it would incriminate a lot of people in there. And then, yeah, I mean, I don't know if you look with the recent SCOTUS ruling, they tossed out that BS felony that I had. The only felony I had was this obstruction charge, 18 USC 1512, which was nonsense that goes back to the Enron scandal for destroying documents. Well, nobody on January 6th was destroying documents, but yeah, a lot of us spent years in prison over that. But all these people with these committees, all these people who were pushing the insurrection narrative, yeah, it turns out they were destroying documents. They've destroyed evidence. They've hid it. I don't know if it's I don't know if all of it is unable to be recovered, but I mean that's a huge attempt to obstruct Congress and cover up the truth. So are these people going to do years in prison for obstruction? I don't know, and I doubt it, but that sure would be nice. That would be justice.
Yeah, I'm not holding my breath. Let's get into a reality sauce here. All right, all these people out there that have had massive hopium. Now, I mean, you've got people that went ultra delusional into super secret code words and message boards and all that, and they went over the top. But then there's another type of hopium, I think, that is just as dangerous, and it's the idea that anybody's getting criminally prosecuted. Wake the truck up, everyone. No one's going to jail. So let's get into that reality. What do we actually need to do? We need to get those who are in jail currently or being dominated, and I mean dominated by the legal system that has all the resources they want. They will ruin your life. They will ruin you financially. They will ruin you socially. I mean, you go down the list. This is what this is. And we need to stop that first. Then you need to change the system. Like you said, you are in trial with people that work for Chuck Schumer. That can't happen. Now, everything I just said there's a possible road to. There is no road to putting Alan Bragg, Letitia James, or Mershon in prison. Hate to tell everybody that. And they're low level. They're goons. They're literally like 5-6 people down the totem pole. Okay? I had Giuliani on a couple weeks ago, and I continue to go back to this interview. One, because I never thought it was going to happen, especially with my work on 9/11. And two, we had a great interview. But he's written a book, The Biden Crime Cartel, and the subhead is The Blueprint for Prosecution of Them. And I just started the interview with like, that's not going to happen, Rudy, and we both know it. And you know why it's not going to happen? Because it's not real. We haven't seen any kind of accountability in this country whatsoever on an executive level since Iran-Contra. I go, most of those people end up getting commuted or pardoned after the fact. The guy they made the face for it, which again wasn't the top guy, he was a couple rungs down, Oliver North, he was the operational guy, got book deals and TV shows and became a millionaire. Not the way to discourage it. And even Rudy's agreeing with me here. And then you have like one other prosecution on an executive level. You mentioned Enron, and it was Scooter Libby, who, again, not the top dog, and like 3-4 guys down, part of the Bush administration, ends up taking the hit, going to prison. I mean, we're talking, guys, 2003 that happened. That's 21 years ago. And by the way, Trump pardoned him. Trump felt bad that he got railroaded when everybody else was a bigger criminal, and he pardoned him. So that's the reality of the justice system we currently have. The guy walking out can't even provide us all the tapes. I know that you are a big advocate for the Patriot Freedom Project. People can go check that out at patriotfreedomproject.com. They're obviously advocating for many of these family members. What are the realistic things that we need to do, okay, and need to push forward for these families so we don't get the retribution, but at least we can stop the persecution right now?
I think that it's really what I kind of hinted at before. Well, first off, for those that are interested in helping to support these families, Thanksgiving's coming up and Christmas is coming up as well. So, the new administration, the transition will come in a couple months, but in the meantime, unfortunately, life can't skip ahead a couple months. So if you want to help these families, a lot of them are suffering. We've helped a couple dozen families recently just to help put, Thanksgiving dinner on the table. So that's a good cause, and I appreciate any support that you can show these families. Unfortunately, the breadwinners are locked up right now, and you have wives who are working 2 or 3 jobs to support their kids, and it's just completely repugnant what they've done, and it's a horrible precedent they've set for the future. But in going forward, I think we just need to keep up the pressure and keep up the communication with the administration that's coming forward. I mean, if you've kept track of Patriot Freedom Project, Donald Trump has supported it. J.D. Vance has also supported it, and intimately so. And there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that people aren't privy to. But they've showed up at our events. They've sent us videos of endorsement, and we have an open line of communication. And so, I don't want anyone who's connected to January 6th to feel hopeless just because they haven't specifically been mentioned or this isn't in the news 24/7. There's a lot going on right now. Trust me, I want this. I lost 3 years of my life. I want this settled yesterday, but we've made it this far, and so we just need to be a little patient. We're all anxious, but just recognize that they haven't forgotten, and so I do think that Trump is going to make good on his word. But we just need to keep up the pressure and make sure that we're keeping up that line of communication with the next administration. We got to make sure that they understand that a lot of these people who are locked up, especially with the most egregious sentences, were completely railroaded for narratives. And I think they know that too. It's hard not to. The way they tried to weave in the Oath Keeper and Proud Boy cases against Trump for the seditious conspiracy charges, which is a nonsense charge in the first place. They know about a lot of these cases too. It would be impossible for them not to. And I think that our main priority is just going to be making sure that we do criminal justice reform is a very important thing too. I was thank God Trump signed the First Step Act, or I would have done a lot more time. I did 3 years on a 4-year sentence. So that's a big thing. I don't think Trump gets enough credit for that. But a lot of J6 defendants, unfortunately, don't get access to the First Step Act because it doesn't always apply to violent offenders. I was fortunate enough to not have violent charges, but a lot of good people, depending on how they, what kind of plea deal they took, they didn't get access to those kinds of credits. And there's a lot to be said, without monopolizing all the time. When we go in there, they classify us as domestic terrorists, so we get what's called an STG file, a security threat group status. So there's extreme monitoring of us. They're probably watching me right now.
So let's just stop for a second. let's just. Once again, the reality is no one's going to jail for retribution. What you're talking about is real stuff. Now, one of the things that we need to repeal, in my opinion, is the idea that a bunch of people in this country are domestic terrorists. I don't like the word. I never like.
Yeah.
Personally, I have been a huge advocate for getting rid of DHS altogether. I didn't want Deutschland security when they told me it was to get the bad Muslim men overseas, okay? And they were telling me about threat codes and how, ooh, we're on terror level orange and we better watch the border and blah, 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 blah. Now, look, they put Kristi Noem in there. That's a good appointment. Kristi Noem is the head of DHS, I think, is one of the better appointments, not because of the domestic terror threat, but because I think that she will minimize or marginalize that as much as possible. Now, again, unless we cut that agency in half, get rid of the subdivisions, the fusion centers, the people really pulling the strings there, I don't know that it could change, but at least there's some monitoring of it. And number two, she will actually enforce border security, which, newsflash, everybody, we had Border Patrol before DHS was involved, and as bad as it was way better. It was way better. You didn't actually help people to come in, get plane rides and hotels. That wasn't a thing. Just pointing that out. Now,
well, I mean, the DHS is basically just a second DOD whose whole purpose is to create psyops and undermine our civil liberties.
It needs to go. It needs to go. I don't like it. It's insane. And from the very inception of it, they were always targeting U.S. citizens. They knew the Muslims weren't a threat here. That's Johnny Knott. They knew it. They knew it. They acted like all these failures. When you look at those guys, they trained at military bases. You know, everybody's acting like the CIA thing is a new thing with al-Bayoumi. I was reporting on that in 2003. They were living with the guy. It was an FBI informant on top. Everybody knew this. Every single one of those guys. Some of them had their addresses and their cars listed at naval stations in Pensacola, people. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, if you haven't figured that one out yet, okay? So from the very inception, they were targeting the American people. By the time the Ron Paul revolution came in 2008, the MIAC report had already leaked out, where you were a domestic terror threat if you watched Loose Change or Zeitgeist, or you had a Gadsden flag, or you had a Christian identity. If you were a Ron Paul supporter, they're all in the list. If you didn't figure it out then, I don't know what to tell you. It needs to go. So that's one of the things that I'm really advocating for here, is that not only do we seek justice for the individuals, but like you said, we have to change the entire system. So this can't happen again because of your political beliefs. The website is patriotfreedomproject.com. We are going to take a quick break. We're going to come back with Tim Hale. We're going to continue the discussion. It's making sense of the madness.
Hey folks, it's your buddy John Rich here and co-founder of Old Glory Bank. Let me ask you a question. Why would you trust your banking with people that hate you? Well, you shouldn't. We're building a freedom economy, and now we have a pro-America bank. It's called Old Glory Bank. Check it out at oldglorybank.com and open yourself an account today.
Old Glory Bank is a full-service, FDIC-insured online bank with business and consumer banking and customers in all 50 states. It takes just 8 minutes to open an account at oldglorybank.com.
I couldn't give anything a higher endorsement.
I would be remiss had I not include Cardio Miracle on my very short list of secrets.
It's the real deal. It's a real product. It's not another supplement.
I'm operating about 6 to 8 hours, and I've noticed that being on this Cardio Miracle has made a huge difference.
Since I started taking Cardio Miracle about 8 months into it, the benefits have been fantastic.
You know, if I get hungry, then I just have a Cardio Miracle.
Not only is it safe, but it's necessary to take Cardio Miracle to stay well.
This let me sleep. It's feeling like more energy, more get up and go. And it's all because of what this company does.
For me as a doctor, Cardio Miracle is a staple.
Cardio Miracle to me is hope in a glass.
To try Cardio Miracle for yourself and get a special fan discount, go to the host page right now and click the link for Cardio Miracle.
And we are back. So let's talk a little bit about this incoming administration as well. I'm glad there's the communication. There are a few picks I don't like, but I mean, RFK Jr. as HHS, boom! I mean, that's great. I know a lot of people were getting behind Gates. I knew he was going to have a problem with that scandal because I'm sorry, whether or not it was a 17-year-old girl, you're partying with escorts and cocaine and you're on that level, they're going to find a way to at least try to discredit you enough where you're not going to be able to get that position. Really liked him in the Russiagate scandals, the second impeachment, January 6th, go to Epstein, down the line, was one of the few people calling out the Johnny nonsense and the bull snap in there. I don't know who that gets replaced with, but that is a huge position, especially for what we're talking about here. There's still about 2 months before anybody's sworn in. We've kind of like forgotten as a country about, the assassination attempts on the guy. I personally haven't. We're also closer to World War III than ever. I'm watching the poot say some very, very tough things. And on top of that, Joe Biden hasn't run anything for 4 years, but now we're just at the point where he's wearing sunglasses in the Amazon jungle, babbling and walking off into the trees. So, I mean, we're in a weird spot. What has to happen within the next 60 days so you even get to that point where you can move for these January 6ers?
Yeah, I think losing Gates was kind of a unfortunate blow, but I do think that ultimately he's going to choose someone who, again, has the same agenda and the same prerogative about ending the weaponized justice. Because keep in mind, he's had a lot of people in the past who've tried to stab him in the back, but this is so early in this administration, he can't choose someone who's not going to, push his agenda forward. It's just not feasible. He's got to have someone in there who from the get-go is willing to, start executing his agenda. I would say that it's important to have all his ducks in a row, because as we've seen with this recent Senate vote, it was McConnell and I think three or four other rhinos in the Senate that were the ones who put the roadblocks up for Gates. So I don't know if they're going to be able to do the appointments where they put the Senate in session or out of session, but I'm hoping that they find a way around it. Unfortunately, again, this is something I always come back to, is that it's not going to get easier just because the election's over. It's going to get harder because the elements inside of the Republican Party that aren't loyal to Trump are just going to start. They're just going to start resisting even more. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure you recall back in after the 2016 election, it was the Republicans in Congress that were stonewalling Trump. They didn't want to do anything to advance his agenda. So that's why the border wall took so long, is because the Republicans were the ones who were were putting up a bigger border wall around Trump's agenda than around the country.
Listen, the Republicans are hot effing garbage. I know that I'm supposed to be on a conservative network. I'm not a conservative. All right, I'm a pragmatic human being. If you want to put me in a corner, I'm a constitutionalist, and we've moved so far away from that. And guess what? You can't have a constitution, a Bill of Rights, and a union for and by the people without a border. That's how you have a nation. All right, so that was inherent insecurity from the very, very beginning. We've been undermined on so many levels by both of these political parties. Thomas Massie is one of the few guys that points that out and is saying, hey, why aren't we doing 12 bills every single year for the budget like we're supposed to? Hey, how come we're not making laws? Congress is the only one that's supposed to make laws. And everybody's just like, oh, believe it, we don't understand. Somehow Thomas Massie gets it. There are these few politicians that kind of supersede that spectrum. And, that's why I think Noam is good. That's why I think Tulsi Gabbard is a great appointment. Like I said, RFK Jr., Vivek Ramaswamy. I'm really hoping that they go in with that style. That's a guy that ran on saying, if I get in there on the first day, I'm going to cut every bureaucracy in half by social security number. Does anybody think the country's not going to run? Look, I get it. There's a lot of government employees that don't like that because they're going to be sweating. But I got news for you. Most of you are totally useless. Forget about totally soulless at this point. I can't imagine a more soul-crushing position than sitting in an office in a cubicle all day with a bunch of other useless people for an agenda that is so anti-human at this point that it's beyond words. So, look, when you talk about the modern-day Republican Party, one of the shifts that Trump has done is the major thing. But we still got to push the people that think Romney's good news. We got to stop Donald Trump from even placating to the idea that Mike Pompeo or Nikki Haley are good people. They're not. They're not good people. I'm sorry, guys. For me, Anybody that signs a bomb with a smile that's going to kill a bunch of people and they act like that's a positive thing for our allies, awful. What I want to see is that person going into a meeting with two people that don't like each other that can somehow maybe come in and get a ceasefire if they can talk to one another. That's the smile I want to see. Smiling while we talk and negotiate people not getting slaughtered. Is that, am I in crazy town here?
Oh, gee, I don't know. You're asking kind of a lot there. You're asking kind of a lot. You know, it's a funny observation. You just mentioned all these useless bureaucrats or whatever, but you ever stop and think, like, when this country was founded, the executive branch was literally just George Washington and John Adams. And then by the end of their administration, you had the War Department, the War Department, the War Department, the Secretary of the Treasury, and the Attorney General's office. There wasn't even a Department of Justice. It was just the Attorney General's office. There were like 3 departments and the AG, and now we have 15 federal departments. I can't even keep track of them. They keep making new ones. And it's like, oh, it's a tragedy. Trump wants to end the Department of Education. It's like, oh, that's such a tragedy. It's just like, well, why? It's just like, can we get rid of one? Just one.
Well, one, again, you just nailed it. Forget about just the government bureaucracies, okay? We've got these subdivisions, like I said, like a fusion center. And we've got all these consultancies that are subsidized and pseudo-government agencies. Hell, man, we've got an entire program on the books that's an art form known as signature reduction that does domestic surveillance and operations in this country for the last decade plus. Are you aware of that program?
Yeah, and then there's quite a bit. I mean, you'd mentioned the fusion centers and stuff like that. I mean, people don't realize, like, everybody's aware of like the CIA, everybody's aware of the FBI, and since Snowden, I think more people are aware of the NSA. But like, how many people are aware of DIA? Like, we have intelligence agencies in pretty much every federal department. So you have the departments, and then there's the agencies within there. I worked for the DoD before January 6th. I was in the Army for 12 years, but I also worked as a naval weapons contractor. And on the Navy base I worked at, you had every agency there too. And every military base, you can be sure that there are agencies there, like literally any DHS.
Well, hold on. Let me just stop you, because you're going to name a bunch of agencies, but then you've got people with Raytheon and Lockheed Martin and Boeing and SpaceX, and everybody thinks, oh, we're going to the moon. No, they're putting up spy satellites and weapon systems, you morons. Like, that's what the multi-billion-dollar, if not trillion-dollar industry is at this point. Tim, we got a few minutes left in the broadcast. I know I ranted and raved on this one. I'm hot fire right now. I'm going to just say this on the air, even though by the time this airs, it's going to be old news. I just got the news after 5+ years of covering the case. Conor McGregor, who everybody thinks is a great guy, has finally been found guilty in a civil court of brutally, violently raping a woman, which he beat really badly. But he finally got convicted today. He should have had a criminal trial, and that just shows I just want everybody to understand. They sell you a narrative. We can't even get justice from some stupid sports star, where in a country in Ireland where this happens, they only convict 8% of rape victims that go to criminal case. 11 out of 12 people get off in Ireland. Let's change that. Sorry, Tim, I'm going to give you the floor. I'm just very happy that just happened. No one's covering it in the United States, even to this day. By the time this airs, it will be covered. I promise everybody. Tim, what do you want to leave the folks with?
Make rape bad again. Yeah, I mean, going forward, look, it's like I said, it's not going to get easier. I mean, it's going to get harder. And this is a reality of the nature of politics. So I just urge people, don't get complacent. We won probably the biggest election in my lifetime, probably the most important one. But, stay on your representatives, pay attention to what's going on. They're going to try to stab Trump in the back. That's what they always do. And, again, even though hopefully this inquisition is coming to an end shortly, just, keep the families in your mind, keep the families in your heart, in your prayers. There's a couple more months still to go. So again, if you want to support some of the families from January 6th, go to patriotfreedomproject.com. If you can help with Thanksgiving or Christmas, a lot of people would appreciate it. And hey, man, I thank you again for having me back on. This was enlightening as always and very humorous.
Well, you know,
I'm a big troll and I always appreciate some good comedy. So thank you.
See, I'm not a troll. This is actually how I feel, everybody. I mean, I'm not doing this for shock value. These are the things that go into my head. And here's the deal. As dark as all this is, I can't do it with anything but humor. Because we do live in the post-truth world. We are in a dark cartoon. And the bottom line is, I'm not looking to anybody else to be my hero, okay? I'm looking to put those people that are in power on the spot with intelligent conversation that they can't weasel their way out of so we can make change, right? And we've got to do it through organization, pragmatism, and reality, okay? And until we pull the Band-Aids off a lot of these things, a lot of these bureaucracies, these government quote-unquote conspiracies, lies, etc., we're never, ever, ever going to be able to regain even a smidgen of our constitutional republic and make this a better place, not only for us, but future generations. And I just won't have that. And I'm going to do it with a damn smile. Tim Hale, love having you on, brother. We will talk soon. We got to take a break. We're going to come back. We got Ed Martin, more Making Sense of the Madness after this.